Welcome. I'm Paul Hanraets. I'm one of the founders of Gambitious. Gambitious is the first crowdfunding platform totally dedicated to games. Unlike Pim, I don't have any street credibility as a gamer myself. I like to game, I love to game, but I really suck at it. My younger brothers always kick my at gaming. A little bit of background. I had a media company specialized in video games a couple of years ago. We had a TV show on the Netherlands, on the Dutch MTV, TMF. We had a big game show compared to Gamescom in Germany, but then for the Benelux market, so for the Netherlands and Belgium. And we had a gamers magazine in the Netherlands that was freely distributed in game shops, the biggest game stores. I saw that company a couple of years ago, and then I thought, well, I have these crazy games ideas. I want to develop games myself. But I didn't have a studio, didn't want to raise a studio myself. So I did a tour to all those Dutch independent studios to see which studio would make my game. And then I found out that we have extremely talented studios in the Netherlands with wonderful ideas and creative people. But they have one huge problem, and that is finding funding for their games. And they do a lot of work for hire games for other people, other companies, and they are bootstrapping, working in the late hours and in the weekends on their own games because they lack funding. So I started the idea to raise an investment fund for the Dutch independent developers. So over a year and a half, I had talks with all kinds of investors, with governments, institutes, and finally we raised about 3 million euros. The Dutch government was about to match the 3 million, so we had a fund of 6 million euros. And then, unfortunately, the crisis came, and one by one, my initial investors pulled. So after a year and a half, after all those talks and telling people about the game industry and about the difference between a PlayStation and an Xbox, and no, not all games are violent, I was a little bit tired by talking to investors, so I focused my ideas on some other projects I had. Then I was contacted by a company called Symbit. They're an equity-based crowdfunder in the Netherlands. So they offer a legal structure and a framework for crowdfunding, but also equity-based crowdfunding. And that's where I started to get interested. This is still before the big Tim Schafer success on Kickstarter. And this is what I kind of believed in. Well, if you've got investors that play games, that know how to pick out the pearls and really see what the nice projects are, those are the people that are likely to invest in games. And those are the people that I don't have to tell the difference between an Xbox, PlayStation and PC. So we start working together, and then we formed Gambitious. Then Tim Schafer came, the big Kickstarter success that also kind of kickstarted Gambitious. We got partners from the United States that are the people behind Devolver Digital. They are a publisher, but they were also the original founders of Gathering of Developers. And I don't know if you're old enough to know that name, but they were the first indie-friendly publishers, where the indie development studios were keeping their IP, and they actually paid out the royalties, and they paid out good royalty rights. And they were at the base of games like Max Payne, Mafia, Age of Wonders. They sold their company in the end to Take-Two, what now is Take-Two. So they're really pro-indie developers. And then I've got another partner in the UK called Andy Payne, who's a quite known name in the UK scene. So we're very much pro-indie development, and then we started Gambitious. So now you know a little bit about me. I would like to know a little bit about you. Who's an independent developer here? Okay, who does work for hire? Who has their own IP? Who's looking for funding for their own IP? Okay. Well, normally I see a lot of more hands, maybe some shy people or no independent developers. So let me start out by what kind of funding there is possible for small independent developers. I'm going to make a disclaimer right from the start. Investors are not created equal. I made a kind of some stereotypes of the type of investors you will encounter, but they are based on true stories, and with like everybody else, you've got good people, good investors, bad investors, nice publishers, bad publishers. So let me start at the opportunities for indie studios. Number one, self-funding. I've called it Here We Go Again. A lot of studios finance their own games and their own IP. with the strategy that a lot of failures, and everybody's making failures, and every game studio is making failures, that one success is making up for all those failures. And don't forget, I believe Rovio had like 45 failures before they came with Angry Birds. So some studios are funding themselves. With funding yourself, you have total creative freedom. You can do what you want, whatever you want, and when you want it. You have the highest upside in revenues if you are successful, because you don't have to share with anybody except for the distribution platform. No marketeer, no publisher. This is extremely risky, though. I've seen a lot of companies fail where they had 3 or 4 medium success games. They had a little money on the bank, had a really nice IP, a nice idea, decided to fully fund it themselves, and the game became a failure, or something else happened. I know some studios that put a lot of development in a Nintendo DS title, and then the market collapsed when they were about to sign with a publisher because of the piracy on the DS, and they had to close down their company. And that's the biggest risk with self-funding. If that success doesn't come, it might be the end of your project and the end of your studio, so highly risky. The second one is FFF, Friends, Family and Fools. I've been there myself. You go to friends, family, and you want to start up capital. Maybe you have a rich Uncle Louis. You go to Louis and say, hey Louis, I have a really nice idea for a game. Would you like to finance me? The only problem with that is I never encountered a game that stuck to their initial development budget. There are always hiccups. There's always more money needed. So it's a great way to finance your project startup. It's probably below 150K, all depending, of course, on how rich Uncle Louis is. But it could put stress on personal relationships, because on the birthday of nephew Nick, you have to tell Uncle Louis his money is burned up and you need more. And yeah, I really know a lot of relationships have been put on quite some stress there. Another option is the business angels. Deal but no violent games. This is actually what happened to me. I lost a potential investor, an older man, quite fortunate. And I lost him as an investor because his grandson showed him a GTA where he ran over prostitutes and beat up prostitutes. So this guy pulled and said, no, this is too violent for me. And then we came in the whole discussion about games and violence, and I had to explain that not every game is violent. You have educational violence or applied games. But I lost him as an investor. So angels are hard to find. That's changing, though. They are estimated to provide 90% of all startup capital. Normally below 2 million euros, but they're kind of new to the game industry or the Hollywood per project model, and that's the model I'm talking about here in my talk. I don't believe in, it's still possible, but I personally don't believe in investing in game companies. I believe in the Hollywood model where you invest in a game or in a film. If I like the project or investors like the project, they should invest in the project and not the company. And I've seen too many, I'm being a creative myself, I've seen too many game studios that had one great idea one day, and people invested in the company, and then they had a great idea another day and another idea the next week. So they kind of divided their attention. I really believe in focus and in one project only, and investing in one project. And that's kind of new for some investors that just want to invest in a company because they think there lies the value. Then the bank. This is typical for the Netherlands, but I have heard stories from other developers in other countries as well, where the bank has little knowledge of the industry. Also, this is changing because a lot of gamers themselves, of course, work, and some of them start working at a bank. And I had some nice conversations lately with an employee at the bank that was a gamer, so he talked more about games than business with me. So that is really changing, but a lot of times you encounter that there's little affection for the game industry. They don't know the industry, they still think it's for little boys only. That's slightly about to change now. They understand there's a wide audience for gamers. But game projects are deemed too risky. It is still a hit or miss driven industry, and unfortunately there are more misses than hits. So a bank is not quite willingly to invest in games. Then you have the publisher. Shouldn't we change your RPG in a first-person shooter? I've heard stories, again, you have bad publishers and good publishers where the studios lost their IP, lost their creativity. At the end, the publisher was calling the shots, completely changed the format of the game. The studio lost passion, lost control, project a failure. So, again, publishers are a great way to build a reputation. They've got the marketing tools, they've got the network, they've got the credibility. They can really push your title if they want to. I strongly believe in partners as a marketing partner, of publishers as a marketing partner, not as an investor. I think a studio should keep their IP. For the distribution, you don't need a publisher anymore, unless you go for a boxed game, but that doesn't happen a lot anymore, especially for indies. So I truly believe as a publisher, as a marketeer, a rev share, let them do what they're really good at marketing, and not as an investor. Publishers also are reluctant to invest in new franchises. It's kind of a safe bet. That's where you get all the prequels and sequels or Me Too games. What is a little bit the tendency with publishers, and I get it disappointed every big game show where you talk with publishers or the suits or the money behind the game industry, that they kind of measure gameplay on an Excel, and fun cannot be put down or analyzed on an Excel sheet. And you see that with the big wonders like Minecraft and last year Hotline Miami. Those were games that were rejected by some publishers at first, and they started doing some self-publishing, and it became a big hit. Then, and somebody asked here about the government. There are great opportunities and subsidies with different governments and organizations, and the EU has a media funds, but there are so many rules and regulations, and I tried to go this route myself. It's so labor intensive. You have to fill out all those forms, and Form A and Form B and Form C, and if you make one mistake, you're rejected, or if you have to do it all over again. But still, it is a great opportunity if there are subsidies and the government is able to help you. There's a high upside. Normally they don't ask any rev share, so there's no dilution. It's a subsidy. And with a lot of formal organizations, once you're in, you're in. You filled out all the forms, have been rejected once or twice, but now you're in. And once you're in, you're in. That means the next time you apply for subsidy for another game, you don't have to go through the whole red tape or bureaucracy again. And normally you get approved a second time. Unfortunately, what I've noticed by some EU subsidies, that it are the usual suspects that get it. I was quite surprised that I saw, for instance, that Ubisoft, I believe it was for Far Cry 2, get a huge subsidy from the EU. And those are the companies that can finance their games themselves. It should go to small independent developers that really need the money to prototype or to build a demo. So again, with a lot of government, it's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, and it's extremely time consuming and restrictive. Then you've got venture capital. Well, you're just a little fish, come back once you're grown up. And there's a little bit a silly picture, but I know a lot of independent developers and studios refer to venture capital as sharks in suits. That's not true for everybody, but VCs rather see a running business and not single projects. They would like to invest in studios, big studios that develop their own engine or some third-party software, and not single projects. It's not interesting for them, and especially their scope is above 2 million, and even that's on the low side. Their scope is much higher. So that's not really an option for independent developers. Then you have crowdfunding. Well, you all heard about Kickstarter, the big Tim Schafer success. It's really everybody's joining the bandwagon. And this is why I believe in crowdfunding. This is your audience. These are the people that understand games, that love games. And these are the people that want you to make your game, so they support you. So we so totally dig your game. These are your fans. What are the big pluses of crowdfunding? It's the power of the crowd. Pitch to your own fans. That's the donation model. I'll explain more about it later on. You've got some game-savvy investors. That's the equity model, and that's one of the models Gambitious offers. I will tell more about that later too. But around equity-based model, you've got the business angels that understand games. And a lot of the investors we are speaking to are people that earned money with games before. So successful independent developers, studios, producers that know the game business and like to invest in the game business. Crowdfunding is also a great marketing tool. Once your campaign is up there on the crowdfunding platforms, you're already doing marketing for your games. It's not, though, a tool to be discovered. It's not a discovering tool. If nobody ever heard about your game, it's really hard to get noticed, even on a crowdfunding platform. But it could be a magnifier. If you already have a fan base, or a fan base is starting to grow around your game, and you put it on a crowdfunding platform and it spreads, you've got fans, ambassadors, it could be a really nice marketing and magnifying tool for your campaign. Well, crowdfunding is not the holy grail. It's extremely labor intensive and you have to really campaign and see it as a campaign. And we've noticed that with the beginning of Gambitious as well, and you see it on Kickstarter, especially in the beginning of Kickstarter you saw it as well, where like game studios put up their project, they had a pitch video or a small gameplay video, and they thought they could relax, hang back in a hammock, pour a cocktail, press F5 every minute and see the money pour in. Well, that's not the case. It's really hard, especially now when even the bigger players are stepping into crowdfunding as well, the renowned names. You really have to campaign. And the big problem with crowdfunding is, and that's something we encounter with Gambitious as well, when we started out, crowdfunding was pretty new. It's still new, and a lot of governments don't know how to cope with crowdfunding, how to cope with tax issues, legal issues. It's so new that they have to adjust the rules and regulations. So rules and regulations aren't set yet for many topics, and it's a little bit a gray area and a big question mark. So that's going to change, and that means we have to adapt with our platform continuously. So what is crowdfunding? The official term, crowdfunding, explains the collective effort of individuals who network and pool their money, usually via the internet, to support efforts initiated by other peoples or organizations. So that's a fancy way to put it. People believe in a game collectively, they put in money because they want that project or company or good goal to succeed. Some information about how crowdfunding is growing extremely the last couple of years. Crowdfunding platforms raised a total of $2.7 billion in 2012. There's an enormous increase with 2011. The global crowdfunding markets have accelerated from an annual growth of 46% in 2011 to 81% in 2012, and the market is forecasted to raise $5.1 billion this year. There's also a negative side, probably this year. We strongly believe this year will make clear if crowdfunding is here to stay or not. Because it's so new, rules and regulations will change, and also what we will see is a backlash from several projects on crowdfunding platforms that simply ask for too little money. They cannot deliver the game, or the game failed, or they failed to come out, and that could be a huge backlash for the crowdfunding when the backers or the investors start losing interest. That's a doom scenario, what I not believe in will happen, but it's a big threat for crowdfunding. So for independent studios, crowdfunding platforms for games, you have Kickstarter. Successful funded games on Kickstarter add up to 45 million. It's more now. You have Indiegogo, 2.4 million. The difference between Kickstarter and Indiegogo is Kickstarter is all or nothing. So if you don't make your goal, you get nothing. Well, Indiegogo lets you keep all the money you raise for that project. Then you have Ulele, that's a gamer site. They just did 1 or 2 projects and then they kind of stopped now. They did 690,000 euros in a funded project. And then we have Gambitious. We just started and we just fully funded our first project, but equity based. So the investors are also shareholders or revenue shareholders in the game for 300,000 euros, but I will explain about that more later on. So what kinds of crowdfunding do you have? You have the donation-based model. Again, I'm coming here with the official term. So in donation-based crowdfunding, funds are collected from a community for a disclosed initiative, but there is no financial return to the people. The return might be a reward or gift or perk. This model is used by Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Ulule and Gambitious. The advantage of this model is there's a high upside. If you make your goal, there's no interest, no dividends, no rev share. You don't have to share with anybody. The money you get is the money you earn, is the money that can go to development of your title. You have no delivery obligations. Yes, you make some promises. With donations, people ask nothing in return. That doesn't happen a lot, but you have no obligations. The disadvantage for the donation-based model is it has platform and genre restrictions. It's quite obvious that iOS and free-to-play games, they all fail on crowdfunding platforms. Free-to-play games are already free-to-play, so you already receive the game, and it's really hard for an iOS game that's max probably $5. Why should you donate $5 if you can buy the game for $5? And that's also a little bit the difficulty with a donation-based model. I think the name is wrong, and it's more a pre-sale model, and I will talk about the pre-sale model later on. The average success rate on a donation-based crowdfunding platform, and this comes from Kickstarter, is about 30% now. So 30% succeed, and that means 70% fails with their funding goal. The average pledge for donations and pre-sale is about $48. Then you have the pre-sale-based crowdfunding model. Some people call donation-based and pre-sale model the same. I take it separately because with the pre-sale model you really expect something in return, and that's the product. So that's the difference between the donation-based model. With the pre-sale model you really expect the finished project to come back to you once the project is funded and developed. The advantage from this model is it has a high upside. Again, no interest, no dividend or rev share with shareholders. It's a great incentive for backers, especially gamers. They get the product they want, and that's the whole accelerator behind crowdfunding. They see a game that doesn't get any funding, so the developers aren't able to develop the game you want to play, so you donate money, so the game gets there and you can play the game. So that's a huge incentive for backers. The disadvantages, again, platform and genre restrictions. iOS free-to-play are difficult. And here comes in the tax uncertainties. You are receiving money. It is called a donation or a pre-sale, and this is where the countries and the rules and regulations aren't quite yet completely clear. Do you have to pay VAT or taxes? Some countries you do, other countries you don't, so it's quite unclear. You do have delivery obligations. If you promise the game in return, you should offer the game. People expect the game. And again, this is a little bit of a gray area. Due to a lot of civil law principles, you have to deliver the game. But still, this is a question mark on a lot of platforms. And here comes another disadvantage of the whole reward system, where a lot of studios that started their crowdfunding campaign made some mistakes. How much work it is for the whole packaging, picking, posting of the t-shirts, the posters, the stickers, the small characters you promised. And a lot of first-time Kickstarter studios made the mistake that they didn't mention or calculate it in the cost of posting and sending your reward all over the world. So the cost of goods for shipping and posting could add up to 10% of your development budget. So that comes off your development budget. Then you have the cost of goods, actually producing the rewards you promised. That also could add up to 20%. Dus that could mean you already lose 30% of your development budget that you estimated that would go to development. You now lost to packaging and sending and the cost of goods. Well, the average success rate is the same as the donation-based model, like 30%. The average pledge is 48%, but you actually could end up at 60 to 70% only left for your actually development of the game. And when we started Gambitious, we got a lot of secretive calls from people that had a successful campaign on a different platform and said, well, I think with all the cost of goods and the shipping, and we made some wrong estimates, we ask for too little money and receive too little money to actually build the game. So they want to do a different round or are looking for additional investors. Then you've got the equity rev share based crowdfunding model, and that's the unique model from Gambitious. With equity based crowdfunding, the funder becomes actually a shareholder in the company. With us, it's more a shareholder in the project that's being funded. That means your investors or backers are entitled to dividends or share in the revenue out of sales of the games. So they invest in your project and they don't want a t-shirt or a sticker or a nice art book, but they actually get a rev share of the units being sold. Well, the advantages is a high incentive for investors because they get a financial return. Because they get a financial return, they're willingly to donate or invest more money. You see quite a difference with the average investment made on Gambitious. There are no platform and genre restrictions. A free-to-play model, if it has a really nice business model and well thought out, investors step in, and you have no after-campaign logistics like picking, packaging, and posting. So a lot of studios that put their project on Gambitious say, well, we're a small independent developer, we've really got a nice IP, a nice game. Please let us just develop a game, let us focus on the artwork, on the coding. And we don't want to get involved with after funding, talking with our backers and sending them packages and complaints and picking and posting and all that extra effort. Disadvantages of equity-based crowdfunding are the legal uncertainties. As I mentioned, rules and regulations differ per country. And you have some pre and post legal procedures. You have to set up a special legal entity, but we provide on the platform all the assistance and help. So the average success rate, we just started out, and it's 25% from the 4 projects that we had on Gambitious for an equity campaign. One project got funded. It's called Train Fever. It was done exactly for a target audience. 2 brothers that coded their own game in their spare time. It's Train Fever, it's a traffic simulation game. They raised 250,000 euros on a platform. Nice to mention is that some of the other projects that were put on Gambitious, 2 of them were picked up by a publisher. So they did find funding, and they found funding because we heavily promoted them. We had a booth at Gamescom, and we showed their trailer, and we had PR firms, and that arranged meetings with the press. So 2 of them got picked up by a publisher. It was a little bit unfortunate for us because it didn't go through the platform, and some of our initial investors were excluded. But on the other hand, hey, 2 independent studios got their project funded. So that's a good sign. What is very nice to mention that from our investors in Train Fever, 1% of the investors were good for 40.4% of the total budget. And this is where I truly believe, and we are adapting our platform for it now, where you both need the gamers, the fans, and the more serious investors to fund a project. We saw that with Train Fever. At first, the traction was really slow. An unknown studio, nobody heard of them, and a train game, a lot of competition, it was a niche. But then slowly there started some traction. The fans started to come in, they invested small amounts of money. The minimum was 20 euros, so 20 euros to 100 euros, maybe 200 euros. Then a little bit, when there came a lot of traction, a little bit the small investors stepped in. Guys with a good job that could maybe invest 1,000 euros or 2,000 euros because they believed in the game and used to play those games themselves. And when that started to happen, it really went fast, because this was a sort of sign for angels that are invested in games that said, hey, look here, the fans, the people who actually play the game, believe in this game, they're starting to invest and starting to donate. Maybe this is a good investment. And then the investors came in that did 30,000 euros and 20,000 euros, and then the game got funded real quick. So that was really nice to see, where we believe that we should offer the donation or pre-sale model to get the fans on board, and if it goes really well, the investors step in. So Gambitious, what is Gambitious? So Gambitious is the first professional crowdfunding platform completely dedicated to the games industry. We are here to help independent game developers and even publishers, small publishers and the good ones, to reach their widest audience so they can get their game to market. I already talked about Train Fever. That was the first sizable equity crowdfunding campaign for a video game. We got a lot of international media attention. We were featured on Kama Sutra, Paper Shotgun, all the big sites, because this was the first equity-based crowdfunding campaign for a video game, and it showed it worked. What we offer with Gambitious is, so we offer the reward and pre-sale based model as in Kickstarter. The only difference with us is we have WYSIWYG funding. That means what the developer sees on his funding goal is actually the development or the development budget that he receives. With Kickstarter, the money is deducted from the accounts from the backers after funding. By us, it's deducted in advance and refunded if the project fails, but if the project is a success, the money is already deducted. Because on Kickstarter, I believe there's like a 3 to 10% failure of payments in the end. So that's even what you have to deduct from development. By us, already taxes are deducted. So what, in the end, by the funding, if a developer asks for 250,000 euros, he gets 250,000 euros minus our 5% success fee. We offer the equity and revenue share based model, and what we're doing now, we've put our site on pause for a month. We are now figuring out a unique hybrid model where you can have a donation-based campaign and an equity campaign at the same time. And that's the big advantage I just talked about, where you have the fans and the serious investors. And if the fans invest, the serious investors will come. We are even talking now about, with some big investors to fund a completion fund. And that means there is this investment fund, and they will guarantee the last 20%. This is not final yet, but that means if a project does really well on Gambitious and gets funded for 80% or 75%, this fund will do the last 25%. So that's a really nice incentive. A big difference with us and other platforms is that we have a hands-on campaign support. We really campaign with you. We have partners in every country, PR firms. We hire them to do some campaigning for you. If we truly believe in your title, we pay for the PR and the whole PR campaign. If the project fails, that's our loss. If the project is successful, in the end, out of the revenues, you return us our PR investment. So we really think with you, we support you, we offer you campaign support. And that's why we're a little bit stricter on the gate than a Kickstarter is. We really have a green light committee where we really pick out the projects that we as a team believe in and think our investors will believe in. So we have a network of game-savvy investors. The people behind us, I mentioned this before, are some big known names in the game industry. I'm not allowed to mention them yet, but that will happen soon. But you can imagine that are the game producers and the big game developers and the big names that were responsible for a lot of nice successes. And those are the people that believe in games and want to invest in games. And then we have a network of third-party game services. And this is where Pim and I are talking now about maybe if you need some additional help from a producer or a marketeer, we can find the right partner for you to develop your game. So right now we have like a month of silence on the platform where we are now architecting our hybrid model. We are open for applications, so the new application round started and we're still looking for a nice project. It wouldn't surprise you that we are flooded with game propositions from all over the world, from really nice projects to terrible projects, and it is a creative industry, so there are a lot of dreamers out there that just place one screenshot and think they can ask for 3 million euros. So we're now open for application, and there are some big names coming to our platform, one of them being Stronghold Crusader from Firefly, and we're talking to some other big renowned names. So we are about to relaunch later this summer and are open for applications. So and then I want to finish with a term I really like: empty pockets never held anyone back, only empty heads and empty hearts can do that. So if you have any questions, please ask them now. No questions?
Well, no questions. I have a question. How big team are under this project? I understand you and
the team behind it.
Yeah, behind it.
Yeah, we've got a platform manager. We've got 2 dedicated developers that are working on the platform. Then we have a marketeer that's our partner in the UK. And then we've got the people from Devolver Digital, so the two. So in total, we are a team of 10 now.
And you can apply as a resident from any country, because Kickstarter is only for US and now for UK.
That's the whole thing that we notice now. And I'm not bashing Kickstarter. Let me say I'm a huge fan of Kickstarter, and every game that gets funded is another game that gets funded. But I heard a lot of complaints lately. You've got a Kickstarter UK now, and that's quite failing because the hardcore backers from Kickstarter are based in the US, and they don't want to invest in pounds. They don't understand in pounds what's foreign is bad in their eyes. So a lot of nice projects actually fail now because they put their project down in pounds. And for a foreign company to be able on Kickstarter isn't that hard. And they approve your project within 2 days, I believe. But to be able to be put on Kickstarter, you have to have an Amazon account. And I heard that's extremely harsh. The people at Amazon aren't the friendliest people I've heard in the way they talk with the game studios. You have to form a Delaware company in the United States. You have to have an American bank account. Plus you need an American, and that's a sort of straw man who's able to provide you with a social security number. You have to have an American social security number. So you have somebody you have to trust 100% because the money will go to his bank account under his social security number. So you really have to trust him, or otherwise somebody has a great vacation for the rest of his life. Yeah. So that's really hard. So yes, you are able as a foreign country to put your project on Kickstarter, but it's a lot of red tape and extremely difficult.